Nothing's gonna go wrong. No.
What's up, everybody? Hey, I am so sorry that we are running behind. I am Paul Scheer, and this is my live virtual signing. What is a virtual signing? Well, I am signing copies of my brand new book, Joyful Recollections of Trauma. And, oh, there it is, Trauma. And because, maybe I'm not going to be in a city that you're going to be in, or maybe you live in a different country. So what's been happening is people have been sending me questions. People have bought a bunch of these books. I'm signing them right now. This is not fake. This is not an AI version of me. So I'm going to be answering some questions. I'll have some special guests here. I'm going to be joined in a little bit by Rob Huebel. Coming up a little bit later, we have Ratliff. You know him from the Dead Eyes podcast. And then, of course, rounding out the end of the 2 hours, because, we're going to be here for 2 hours. I got Jason Mantzoukas coming in for a little just chat. I am excited to be here. And this is day 2 of my press tour because my book came out yesterday. And it has been absolutely amazing. Thank you all for purchasing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for, all the support. Honestly, I know that people go, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Thank you, the Academy. But I am truly overwhelmed. You all are amazing. And I got questions here. I'm going to see if there's going to be a chat popping up here. But if there's not, I got questions here. So Adam from Ohio asked me, because you all can submit questions early, what movies most inspired you or kept you hopeful during challenging times in my life? Honestly, all movies inspired me, and they were my refuge. Movies and TV were my refuge. But there was one movie that I loved, and it was a movie I watched time and time again, and it was a Richard Pryor movie called The Toy, which I loved, which is a problematic movie, honestly, but I loved Richard Pryor. And that was my favorite movie when I was a kid. And then there's another movie that I really, really loved. Obviously, Goonies, James Bonds were always really, really big for me. And then TV shows, it was Different Strokes, Silver Spoons. Those are my classic ones. But I always wanted to be in those shows. And one of the things that was so cool this year was I got to be on Night Court with Rob and Rob Huebel. And it was one of the best experiences because I watched that show growing up, and then I got to be on the set of that show, the exact same show created from the blueprints with John Larroquette, who was on that show. So that was the childhood dream come true. Benjamin from Ohio, huge. You wrote Hugh fan, huge. I hope you're. Thank you, Benjamin from Ohio, huge fan of your work and live and live, laugh, and love your podcast. My question is, what made you start doing How Did This Get Made? Well, he goes, were you just talking to friends and thought you should do this? Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, June and I had watched, this movie called Wall Street 2, Money Never Sleeps. And we went to this party at our friend Jackie Clark's house, and we started talking about how terrible that movie was. And when we were talking about that movie, what we kind of started to do was just make fun of it. And then Jason said, well, this should be a podcast. And I was like, well, it should only be a podcast if you do it with us. And that was How Did This Get Made got born, really just from simply that. And then what else? Yeah, so that's How Did This Get Made get started. I know we have a guest in the green room right now, but I'm going to give him one more second to answer one more question, because I know we started a little bit late. UK, welcome UK. I'm excited that you're getting a book. I wanted to be in the UK this weekend. I just couldn't pull it off because I was at a taping of Human Giant 24-hour marathon, and I think about it all the time. What was it like to have control of MTV and your favorite memory from that event? Well, this is a good question. And you know what? Honestly, a great time to bring on our first guest, Rob Huebel, who I starred in Human Giant with. We co-created it, and he is amazing. So please, let's bring on Rob. How are you, buddy?
Hey, buddy. How are you? Congratulations on the book. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, well, thank you. This is exciting. We stream every Thursday on Friend Zone and YouTube and stuff like that. It's a little different. This is like a professional thing. What was your favorite moment from that 24-hour marathon?
Oh man, it's all such a blur. I think the later it got in the evening was probably my favorite time, because I just remember being so exhausted, and I remember Riggle coming on at some point, and
yeah, it was a security guard.
Yeah, Riggle doesn't like us to tell the story, but I think he'd had a few beers and was just, he was like the He was supposed to be the security guard in the green room, and he was just like roughing people up and like saying stuff he wasn't supposed to be saying. So that
And we
was
were
one of
on
my
live
favorite.
TV.
Yeah, I mean, really insane that MTV would let us do that. They would just let us have the channel for 24 hours.
And I remember they
Really
kept on
crazy.
saying to us, like, you don't need to like fill it all. You could just like play episodes of TV. And we're like, oh, we want to be alive as much as possible. Like we tried to shoot so many bits and we're just do live bits. My favorite thing was like, we had Mastodon play, that band Mastodon, and people in the MTV building were coming down and just like, whoa, MTV's playing music. Like people were excited. And I mean, Bob Odenkirk was on a JetBlue flight and saw it. And then like we went from the airport to the studio. Like that was, I feel like we can't get anything close to that anymore, but that was like my favorite moment.
I feel like it was so chaotic. I feel like there was a part where Will Arnett took Michael Cera hostage or something like that. Or
yes, yeah. Oh no, it was John Krasinski took Michael Cera hostage with a finger gun. Yeah.
Yes. There was so much crazy stuff. Well, Paul, I'm coming at this a little bit late. Obviously, you're busy signing books. How many is this like? How many more do you have to do?
Well, I mean, I'm in a room full of books right now. Like I've basically 500 people are getting books signed by me, and as many more as I can keep on going. But so 500 people are getting all these hand signed books, and then whatever you don't get, you'll get a book plate book. But I heard you have. I mean, it's weird. I mean, I'm kind of trying to promote my book, and people go out and get it. But
yeah,
you got something going on?
I wanted to take this opportunity not only to congratulate you on your book, but also to let you know that I wrote a book. And I don't really know how the industry works exactly, or if this is cool, but
sure.
you're not the only. No, well, I mean, you're not the only one who can write a book. Let's just put it that way.
Of course. I mean, look, I think I get it. So you wrote a book. I didn't even know that you were writing a book.
I did. I wrote a book, and obviously your book is about you, which I think is great, and that's fantastic. But I also wrote a book about you, and I just wanted to share that with you. This is a book that I wrote, and it's just coming out today. It's called Paul Scheer, The Wit and Wisdom of Paul Scheer, A Comedic Journey. So you can take a look at that.
That's not me on that cover. First of all, I think that people are going to be confused if they're trying to order Joyful Recollections of Trauma. They're going to be confused if they're putting that into like their web browser.
Well, you could buy. It's up to. It is you. It's a picture of you that I had in my computer. I'm pretty sure that's you. The thing is that I don't think you need to hog all the books about you. I think it's great that you have a book about you, but what about other people's books about you? Why isn't there room for that?
I just feel like I don't know, Rob. I don't know.
Paul, I worked really hard on this. Yeah. I talked to your publisher, and they said it was fine if I could come on and promote this. So I'm just going to do.
I don't think that my publisher said this is fine. Okay.
They were very rude to me. I just wanted to read a couple quick excerpts, and you can tell me what you think.
Oh, all right. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Again, I put a lot of work into this. It took me a while to do this. So this is great. This is from Paul Scheer, The Wit Wisdom of Paul Scheer, A Comedic Journey. Okay.
It doesn't even have a back. It just is like a plain black. Okay, yeah.
I didn't want to waste money on the back. I wanted to put all the money on what's inside the book. And as you can see, this one is not as thick as yours, so it might be more fun for people to read mine. It depends on how much you like, how much you like reading. But mine will definitely be quicker. I didn't pack it with all these.
All right. So go ahead. You can read it, I guess. Yeah, sure.
This is just a little bit on your background that I wrote. Scheer's experience with the upstanding residence detachment not just added to his development as an entertainer, yet additionally acquainted him with his future partners, including Aziz Ansari and burglarized Huebel. They would later collaborate.
First of all, I'm going to stop you. Wait. First of all, what was that? I think they're trying to. Were you trying to write Upright Citizens Brigade? What did you write there?
I wrote upstanding residence detachment.
No, it's Upright Citizens.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as UCB. Have you ever heard of poetic license? It's what a writer can do to sort of change the names of things to make it sound a little bit, different or like more exotic. So that's what I did in some of my book.
Wait, but why did you change your name? What is your name in the book?
Burglarize Huebel. I've just always liked cool characters with cool nicknames. So I figured Burglarize is like kind of a cool sounding name, and you don't really see a lot of characters with that name.
It feels like you have written this by AI or something. It seems like an AI kind of generated.
What?
Did you just like
what?
I'm just saying it.
How dare you?
Well,
how dare you, sir?
Okay. All right. I'm not.
I worked very hard on this. Okay. I stayed up a couple nights working on this. Let me just read a couple more.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
a couple nights. That's all you worked on this?
Well, I was sort of busy, so I had to kind of, work quickly. Here we go. This is more of your background. Paul Scheer started his vocation in media outlets as an individual from the upstanding residence unit, an eminent improvisational and sketch parody bunch. He improved his comedic abilities through live exhibitions and coordinated efforts with UCB individuals. Scheer's advanced accompaniment, the MTV sketch parody series Human Monster, where he displayed his comedic ability.
These are wrong.
I haven't even gotten to the good part. He worked with his comedic ability close to Aziz Ansari and Ransack Huebel.
Ransack? You from...
Yeah. Well, that one I changed it from burglarize to ransack. Paul, if you're going to stop me, I'm not going to be able to get through all this. Okay.
I don't want you to get through all this. Now I'm seeing the chat is blowing up. They go, "Oh, I want the red edition. I want the red." No, there's no red edition. There's
people in the chat know that. Look. Show me how thick yours is. Yours is way too thick, Paul.
Mine is like pretty.
People don't have time for all that thickness. Yeah. Okay, mine is written on the thinnest paper possible. Mine is written on tissue paper.
Font? How big is that font, Rockin'? Like, what is that?
My font is 35 point. Okay, here we go. Here's another good one. This part is great. Okay.
Oh no.
Talking about Scheer working in the upstanding residence unit theater, and then the group Respecto Montalban. The gathering included in Respecto Montalban, Burglarize, Wriggle, Ransack Huebel, Jack McBrayer, and Donna Fineglass. I don't know.
Right. Wow, I always love performing with Burglarized and Ransacked.
Well, I changed. I gave in that chapter. I decided to give Wriggle the name Burglarize, and I took Ransack. I just want to skip ahead to. What's up?
Go ahead. But I mean, I guess
just one more part. This is about a TV show that you and I did together called Human Monster. Human Monster. In 2005, Scheer started teaming up with jokesters Lute Huebel, Aziz Ansari, and Jason Wallner on short movies. Their most memorable recordings were Shutterbugs and Illusionators. So that's just a little bit about. I changed my name in that one to Lute Huebel. So,
okay, the chat's going crazy. Jake Hamilton, Aaron Curtis, they're like, "Give me the red ones. I want the skinny red ones." This is not cool, man. This is
obviously mine. How much is your book, Paul? I don't know how much money your book costs. My book, I think, is like. Yeah, my book I think is like $3 or $4, and you can get this. It's a fantastic book. You can read this on the subway.
Me, man. This is not cool.
It's so
this
thin.
Is not cool. By the way, Rob, I have a feeling that you just write a Paul Scheer biography on some sort of like a chat GPT.
Oh, what?
And it came out like
okay. Here we go. Classic move by you, Paul. I knew it.
What?
I knew that eventually you were going to accuse me of using AI to write a book about you. Which, if I'm being honest, I'm a very busy guy. Okay, I don't have all the time and skills to write good words and put them all together in like one long book. So why not use AI? Okay. AI is a great help to all of us. And
Rob, I just feel like you're profiting on our relationship, and the fact that the audiobook you released is just like basically a sounded like a Scarlett Johansson reading my stuff is really weird.
This is unbelievable. I thought you would be flattered. I
No,
thought
I'm
you would
not
be
flattered. I'm
flattered.
promoting my book. I'm promoting my book. I don't need you to be promoting a competing book that now
I'm
everyone loves it.
promoting my book about you. Paul, you say
Oh, man,
tomato, I say tomato. Look, you have a book
no.
about you. I have a book about you. What's the
And
difference? It's all about
I
you. It's
I put a dedication to you in this book, Rob. Did you know that I put a dedication? I said here, where is it? I'll find it. It's I put a dedication right in here. It's oh, right here. Rob Huebel. A lot of people know you for your luscious lips and your sexy gaze, but what people don't know is how supportive you are as a friend, and that means the world to me. And you know what? You're no friend, man. You fucking made an AI book, and I'm
oh,
pissed.
look. This is upsetting to me. I'm going to have to talk to your publishers because
All right, don't
right
talk to
now they're
anybody.
so upset with me because I'm trying to do some sort of like a profit sharing deal where we split the money on
Oh,
your book
I get some of
and
my
my
money.
book.
How
So
much
yeah, I mean,
percent?
I talked to them because we'll pull all of our money, just like waiters at a restaurant. I'll put in
Okay.
all the money, and you put in all the money from your book, and we'll split it down the middle like
Oh no, that's okay.
buddies.
That's ridiculous. No, no, I'm done. This is it. You know what?
Paul,
Look,
it's Luke
uh,
Hubel. Why are you treating me like this?
hey, regularized people, get the hell out of here. I'm done with you. Thank you for trying to come on. I thought you were here to support me, but you're just here to hawk your AI books. And I
Okay, well,
am,
you
and
know
I,
what? Good luck,
what?
buddy. Sure, your book
Oh,
is great. Everybody says it's funny and it's got emotional stories and it's such a fantastic read and everyone's enjoying it. And maybe I was a little bit jealous, okay, but that's no reason to
oh,
treat me like this. I'll see you never, or
oh, come
possibly
on, man.
the
Get the
next
hell
time
out.
we
Get him
do a
out of here.
live
Get him
show
out of
together.
here.
Goodbye.
Oh man, the worst. Rob Hubel, Loot Hubel. I can't believe it. You know what? Jake, you're wondering why I look like I'm in a public library. I'm not. I'm in the offices of Harper here, the beautiful offices of Harper. That's some of their great books right there. The Giving Tree. We actually made a Giving Tree shirt the other day for the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Science. Thank you, Rob Hubel, for coming in. Christopher from New Jersey. Who is my favorite longtime character actor? Longtime character actor. Oh man, that's a really good thing to ask. I would say I am always I'm a fan of Steve Buscemi. I don't know if he's a character actor though. Like somebody who's like a great character actor. Oh my gosh, that's a really good. And here's the problem. Honestly, the best character actors are people like, I know that guy, I know him. Xander Berkeley is one of the best character actors. If you look at Xander Berkeley, he was the dad who got when T2 Terminator 2 when they shoot that when he's drinking milk and the spike goes in his throat. That's Xander Berkeley. He was on A-Team twice. I'm stealing his story, but Xander Berkeley said that the second time he was on A-Team, Mr. T tackled him and was like, "Didn't I arrest you last season?" Xander Berkeley, a great character actor, has been in a ton of stuff. Check out his bio. I mean, everything. All right. What else? Francis from Pennsylvania writes, what was your favorite story to have been part of the book? Francis, writing this book, and by the way, I'm still doing all these real signings. I didn't think I was going to be able to do two things at once. I found so many things in the final edit of this book. And as I have finished this book, I keep on remembering things that I forgot. But one of my favorite things in this book that was put in at the very last second was the time I almost killed Lou Reed. True story. I almost hit Lou Reed when I was driving a car and he was riding his bike. And so I almost put the leader of the Velvet Underground in the ground. And you'll hear more about that in the book. Doug from Pennsylvania, if the book was made into a movie, who would you cast? Well, look, we're all working actors. I would cast me as me. No, but I mean, it's weird. I don't know if I have like a full lineup of like kid actors. I could say, oh, this kid actor. We'd have to find somebody, find a generational talent. But I would cast June as June. No one is as wonderful as June. I wouldn't cast that damn Loot Huebel though. I would not cast Loot Huebel in this movie. All right, Donald from Missouri. Of all the childhood stories told on How Did This Get Made, which one makes you the most uncomfortable thinking about? Well, honestly, Donald, that is something I've never really wrestled with. I've never been uncomfortable telling these stories. I think when I tell them, I realize how it makes people feel. And I think part of the writing this book that was really interesting was I actually go a lot deeper into those stories. I think that, when people go, oh my God, that was traumatic, I'm like, well, you don't even know half of it. And that's kind of part of what this book does, is kind of tell you the story behind the story. So there might be things that you recognize in this book from How Did This Get Made, but there's also some deeper stuff in there as well. So I'm never embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed about this book. But I will say I am slightly embarrassed that I was mispronouncing Ron Silva. It's Ron Silver, and I was pronouncing it Ron Silva for the longest time. So that was my Long Island accent coming into play. So that's probably the most embarrassing thing from How Did This Get Made. All right, what else do we got here? Daniel from Texas. During the early years of stand-up, were there negative reactions to your show, and did it make you want to divert? Well, Daniel never did stand-up, but I will tell you this much: doing sketch comedy and improv at UCB was one of the most fun experiences, because we would do shows, like I would do sometimes shows like twice in a night, 5 nights a week. And there was one show that we had called Robot TV, and Robot TV was a show for robots by robots. We all wore painter's outfits. We had Terry Ginn, great talented guy, playing bass on the side of the stage. And then we had a slideshow going off, and we would all talk like this. We would say, we do this show for comedy. And then in the middle of the show, we would salute our creator, Landau, all hail Landau. And then the show would stop as we just said, all hail Landau. And the premise or the bit of that show, it was a Friday at midnight show. We would walk the audience. We would try to see if we could get the audience to walk out before we ended the show. So, yeah, there are moments like that where we aggressively, like, we're messing with the audience. But then there was like a moment where I took this improv show that we were doing here in New York City that was really popular, called The Real World, which is like a parody of MTV's The Real World. And we brought that to Minneapolis. We brought it to this place called Knuckleheads. And Knuckleheads was this comedy club in the Mall of America. And as I introduced the show and we got like the first minute into it, somebody from the audience yelled, "Kill yourself!" That was a moment where I was like, okay, maybe we cut this show a little short tonight. But yeah, there's always going to be some rough moments. John from New York. By the way, if you're just tuning in, I'm Paul Scheer. My book is Joyful Recollections of Trauma. I'm doing a live signing right now. You can sign up if you go to Premiere Live. Is that what we're doing? Premiere Live? Sure, Premiere Live. Or you just go to my website. You go anywhere and you can sign up to get one of these books. If I'm not coming to your town, I am going around to a lot of different places. But if you want to get a book signed by me, and you see I'm doing it right here, it's happening. You can get a book. So Premiere Collectibles or Premiere Live. Or just Joyful Recollections. I think if you go to joyfulrecollections.com, you can get it. Okay. Bam. What do I got here? John from New York. Why did you decide to write a book, and what part of the entire process was your favorite? And Geostorm. And to your Geostorm, I go, Geostorm! Okay, Geostorm. I've been telling these stories on How Did This Get Made for the last 14 years. And every time I told them, there was this like reaction to them. And everyone was like, oh, you got to write a book. People put together supercuts and Reddits and everything. And I knew I wanted to write a book. I just knew that, like, if I just did the stories from How Did This Get Made, it wouldn't feel like it was much of anything. And I figured, how can I actually embrace what I think people wanted to read, but also do something that was worthy of being a book? So I before I sold the book, before I even got an agent for the book, I started thinking about, talking about a part of my life that I didn't really ever talk about before. And I just, knowing that I had no pressure to hand in a draft or do anything, I was allowing myself to write, and I started to find this story that had been very private to me, and even to my friends for a long time. And that's what kind of came out. So it wasn't hard to write, but it was hard to kind of figure out the balance of how do I tell that story? How do I, give people what they want, but also give them something a little bit extra, like, so it feels like it has some weight to it. And so what I mean by weight is I do reveal that I murdered somebody and I buried their gold, and you'll have to go find the gold. So that was a challenge, to bury that gold in a place where it's going to be hard times. Do you remember David Blaine had a book where he buried gold. I don't think anyone found it. All right. Joel from California. What's up, California? Writes, how did your childhood trauma correlate with addiction? And what steps can individuals take to avoid the pitfalls, triggers associated with their traumatic experiences? It's interesting. Joel, I have no addiction problems. I mean, maybe I'm addicted to work, but no, I don't really have that. I would say that, I want to answer this seriously, but the pitfalls. You write this thing about what steps can individuals take to avoid the pitfalls of triggers associated with their traumatic experiences. I read this great book, and I think there's a lot of self-reflection that needs to go on, right? And I think there's a lot of empathy and sympathy that you have to have for yourself in the process of admitting like what you've been through and where you are and actually being vulnerable. I think when you have issues of abuse and trauma, it's very hard to admit your own vulnerability because you've spent so long trying to be strong. So once you start to get in touch with that, I started to think about this in this image of you as the adult that understands who you are and where you are and that you are safe, is now in charge of protecting that little version of you, the version of you that is hurt, the version of you that can be triggered like that. I always call it like sounds silly, but like your little trauma child. And so maybe the idea is like always remembering when you are getting triggered, like think to yourself, is that me being triggered or is that my inner trauma child? Can I put that child behind me and stand in front of that child and protect them maybe like the way that you weren't protected? Or maybe you don't have to be a child to be traumatized. Obviously you don't. But like sometimes I think my biggest pitfalls were reacting from that voice, even though I had grown and changed since then. Serious question. And now we go to Jason from Wisconsin. Paul, in dealing with my mental well-being, I am curious about what moment or person helped you most in identifying a path forward with your self-care. Honestly, it was, I went to therapy when I was in my 20s. I had been avoiding it for a long time because I didn't trust it. I didn't trust it because when I was younger, I went to a therapist who said they were going to help me. Not like help me like mentally, but help me in my own family situation. And then they didn't really do anything. So I was nervous to go into therapy. But when I had broken up with a girlfriend, we were going to couples therapy. By the way, tip, if you're going out with somebody and you're going to couples therapy, just end it. You don't need it. You don't need to start there. It's over. It's not working. But we went to that therapy session. And she decided, we were going to break up, which was the eventuality. I mean, it was nice that we spent a couple $100 on couples therapy, but it wasn't going to change anything. And the therapist asked me, she's like, do you want to stay? Do you want to stay and chat? And at first, I just said yes because I wanted to be like the better person in the relationship. I was like, well, I'm going to keep on going back. So she knows I'm not the crazy one. But I think that seeing me in a relationship and seeing the way I was acting in that relationship and how differential and passive I was in those moments, she was able to sort of identify something that I didn't really ever identify myself, which is that I did have anger. And at first it felt like I don't have anger, I'm fine. And, slowly but surely, she kind of opened me up to, figuring out that maybe these breakups, maybe these things, these patterns that I had in my life weren't because the other person was crazy, but because I was not well, not crazy, but just not well. And I was dealing with things in a kind of an immature way. Two serious questions back to back. Tyler from Kentucky, what do you got? I've been a huge fan since the league, and I keep up with How Did This Get Made and Unspooled, and I would love to see you guys do a show in the Nashville, Louisville area. What are the odds of us getting you, June, and Jason together for an on-screen comedy series at some point in the future? Okay, well, two questions there. I would love to do Nashville. I think that we tried to do Nashville. And Grand Ole Opry is in Nashville, I think, maybe. We are trying. So that's going to happen. We just kind of are at the whim of our booking agent finds places that we can go, and then we kind of try to put them all together. And June and I, it's harder for us to tour with the kids because we don't want to take them out of school, but we also don't want to be away from them for too long. So that's that. As far as Jason, June, and I, well, we were all in The Disaster Artist, the movie about the making of The Room. If you didn't know that, check it out. It's really great. And June and I are going to be in a show together called Dinks, Dual Income, No Kids, created by Marta Kaufman and Hannah Cantor, that we were shooting a pilot for Freebie. We've been all working together on that with some really fun special cast. And just like the League, I'm sure that Jason will be in it. And of course, Jason and I were together on the League, and June popped up on the League as well. So we'll always be together. But as the three of us working on one show, it may happen. But, maybe not too. It's kind of great to have these breaks from each other, and we love doing the show, so I think it keeps us fresh. If we were to do everything together, I think we'd get sick of each other. Any other questions here? At what point did I remove the word childhood from the title? Joyful Recollections of Trauma. No, that was it. That was the title. I had one other title, which was The Miseducation of Paul Scheer, but I didn't want to be ripping off Lauryn Hill too much. So this is the title, because I think whenever I talked about this, it was always in a very positive, joyful way. So yeah, the book, is the first part of the book is about childhood, and the second part of the book, not so much. It's about being older than a child. And then, okay, what else do I got here? I got, is there a second book in the works? Here's what I'll say. As soon as I finished writing this book, things started popping up into my head, more things. And as a matter of fact, there's so many things in this book that it doesn't cover. I would love to maybe write a second book, but I also see sometimes people release a second book and then it doesn't do so well. So then I get scared. So maybe I shouldn't release a second book. Maybe I should just release one book and be happy with it and done with it. What I am going to try to do, though, in the meantime, is continue to write on my Substack, which is totally free. And there will just be dumb bits and maybe longer pieces. But I love writing and I love doing this. And there's so many more things I haven't shared and talked about. But, right now, I'm barely into this. So I'm, yes, definitely thinking about it. But I think one of the great things about working with Harper and this entire amazing team here, who has been so supportive since the very beginning, is really recognizing a thematic element of this book that made it something that isn't just a book about, funny stories about, working with Nicolas Cage or, just anecdotes from Human Giant. Like, this is something that I feel like hopefully is a little bit deeper and a little bit more meaningful for people who don't know me or the podcast or the TV shows. So yes and no, I really want to, but I'm also scared to do it again. All right. Okay. So then, what else do I have? All right. So these are good questions. You can keep the chapters. You can keep the questions coming in here in the chat, because I love looking at that. But we have some more special guests coming in. A lot more special guests. And like I'm saying, right now I'm going to put a geostorm in this one. Who knows who's going to get this? I don't know. But there you go. I put a geostorm there for somebody. All right, if you go to joyfulrecollections.com, you can get yourself an autographed book or book plate. I don't know how it's all working right now, but you can also just join the chat and ask me questions. I want to thank you all for being here, for doing this. I mean, this has been incredibly overwhelming. Everyone who's signed up to get a book. I want to make sure that I'm available and out there, and I'm seeing everybody's responses to it, which are awesome. So I'm excited that you guys can all get people can get a autographed book. All right. This is a fan favorite segment that we're going to do here. So on this, we are going to just kind of ask some simple questions. Where were you born? I was born in Long Island, outside of New York. I moved around. I was realizing this. I was talking to my wife, my former ex-girlfriend. And I realized I moved to 5 different spots on Long Island from ages of birth to when I went off to college. 5 different spots. So I don't have any real connection to home. It's not like, oh, that's my block. As a matter of fact, when I was finishing writing this book, I drove to the house. A lot of stories in this book take place in this house that I grew up in, that when I've shown it to people, pictures of it, people go, oh, you lived in a trailer park. And I didn't think that was true. But then when I went back, I legitimately got scared driving down that block. I was like, oh shit, this is tough stuff. So one of the cool things though about the book is I just wanted to check some of these locations because I've been thinking about it so much, but I hadn't seen it or visited it. I live in LA, and I talk about this broken bench that I always remember from my front porch. And when I drove by my house a couple months ago, I haven't been there for like 30 some odd years. That broken bench was still there on the side of the house. And it kind of blew my mind because I saw that bench so clearly in my mind when I was writing this book, and I saw everything so clearly. And when I went back there to see that I wasn't making it up, that I wasn't imagining it to be worse or anything than it was, but to see those objects. There's a story about a 7-Eleven in here, and I went to that 7-Eleven. It was wild to see. We do have another special guest joining us. And I will let him introduce himself. But I would love to bring on our video guest. Oh, hey, what's going on?
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
I'm Connor Ratliff.
Okay,
We're
great.
friends.
All right. I didn't want to set you up in the. So this is Connor Ratliff, everybody. I'll give you a proper introduction.
Okay.
Connor is the absolute best. Connor, you know him from the Dead Eyes podcast, which is amazing. His documentary, I'm going to mess up the title, Connor. I Am George Lucas?
Yeah. I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff story.
Is amazing, and you got to check it out. It's at like select theaters. Follow Connor on Instagram, and you'll see where it's playing, and they have great Q&As. I love that film, and we played together this week at Rat Scraps in New York with Connor, one of the greats, a great actor. You know him from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. You also know him from the Blacklist, right?
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. I want to talk about your book. I've just started reading it. I was going to do a bit. I was going to do a character bit. I don't know if was it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did Jason do a bit?
No, Jason's just going to chat, and Huebel and I did like a mix between a bit and a chat. So this is perfect. I would love to just chat with you. I didn't want to.
I was going to do. I had a character I did once on Comedy Bang Bang called Mr. Books, and I was going to come on as Mr. Books. But then I started listening to the audiobook of your book. Because I had ordered a copy and it hasn't arrived yet, so I think it's arriving this afternoon. So I'm like, great.
Okay.
And then I just thought, I got immediately so engrossed in the sincerity of your book that I thought I don't want to sully this with a dumb character coming on. But I'm fascinated. But I have a lot of questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh my gosh, this is great.
Because I don't feel like I had I don't think I had a lot of childhood trauma. I think I had a pretty nice childhood. I think probably the closest thing would be that like my dad had a work schedule where he was at work when I was at school and I was in bed before he got home and then he was in the National Guard 1 week in a month. So really when I thought about it, like there were kids with divorced parents who saw their dads more than I did at a certain point.
Yeah.
But it was not, we go visit him at work. It was not, I had overall a sort of ideal.
Had an amazing job. I mean, your dad was like a local newsman. Like he was a celebrity in town, right?
Yeah. But because he hosted a kids show and he did the 6 and 10 o'clock news. So that meant I would see him in the morning when I'd go off to school. I'd get done at 3:30. He'd be at work. And then by the time he got home, I'd be asleep, But when I was getting through the first part of your book, I was struck by the fact that you seem to have a much more intense childhood experience than I had. There were things that you went through that were not, I don't have anything to match it, but we responded to life the same way. Right. You and I.
Yeah, no, I the little that I know about you, and I think I feel like freshly knowing about you just from the documentary and stuff like that, I can see some elements of that, in different ways.
Our relationship to our imaginations is very similar as kids in that, like, when you were going through, who's the cop? The cop is
Lance Hansen, yeah.
Lance Hansen.
Yeah.
And playing all the characters and stuff like that. Like, that was my favorite thing as a kid, would be to play with toys and play all the parts and make up characters. I had an imaginary friend that I played, which was the same as you.
Oh,
Like you play the imaginary like friend. I used to leave my house to go to my friend Scotty's house. Scotty did not exist. I would leave, I would go put on a hat, and then I would come back to the house and I would say, I'm Scotty, is Connor here? And and my mom would say, oh, Connor just left, he went to your house. I thought, well, I'll wait for him to come back. And then I'd go play by myself in my room as Scotty. And then after a while I would leave and say, I guess he's still at my house. I'll go see if he's there. And then I'd come back without the hat and I would say, I went to Scotty's house and he wasn't there, so I just played in his room with his toys.
I love that. I was thinking about this thing, and it's not in the book, but I would for a little bit of time I had like a superhero persona, so I decided I would carry my own like costume in like, you know, the way Superman would change into something else, and I was always having a hard time like fitting the boots that my superhero would be, so I was like just shoving them into my where my belt would go into my pants, like these boots. But I was like walking around and be like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, nothing. I'm fine. I'm like, you know, like, but this idea of like that I was fooling. First of all, that I was fooling anyone, which I think it only until like recently did I realize, oh, I didn't fool anyone. Like, no, everyone knew that I was this superhero that I was also trying to be. But did you feel like your mom, like, that you fooled her, or she was just playing along?
I don't know. I don't have a solid memory of it. This has all been told to me. If anything, I feel like I almost have a memory of having a friend named Scotty. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right.
But it's interesting to me because for you, it feels like it's a coping tactic. It's a survival tactic. It's a way of tapping into your own sort of like reservoir of like trying to find joy and comfort.
Yeah.
In your own mind.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're in situations where the external world is making you feel bad, you know?
You know, I was talking about this last night, and I said something that I haven't said before, and you know, I don't know what your relationship to TV and movies were, but like that was my escape in many respects. Like most kids, I was the only child, so I had like this ability I just wanted to be in the TV, and I think that in a weird way, I remember certain things from my life because I started to treat them like movies, and I would almost be outside of myself in moments. Like it was like, oh, that's happening to this character, or I am in this world, which is hard to kind of explain, but I think that there's a reason why like there's certain memories that are so clear to me, because it's like I almost on the outside watching it like I'd be watching a TV show, because everything to me was TV or movies. Like that was my only way to kind of embrace reality.
And do you think as a kid you had any awareness of like I'd rather of your own imagination that you were doing it for comfort, or do you think it just was a natural instinct?
You know, I'm sure that on some level it was like a way to just take control and deal with things, you know, but I don't think I was aware enough to know that, right? You know, it's like, I think when you're a kid, you just don't know that anything is weird or different, like, you know, and yeah, like, so I don't think I was that smart to be like, oh, this is how I have to cope, because I think that that's how like certain things happen. You know, if people are OCD or having these things, it's like, oh, I'm doing these things to have some sort of control. So I think like it was an unintentional way of controlling, but maybe in a way where other people might, you know, pick at things or do something else. So I was just like creating movies and creating these characters, because I was like all alone in this house because I had no brothers or sisters, and I lived on a block where there were no kids. So it was sort of like the only escape I had was myself in a weird way.
Yeah. It also struck me like when you're a kid, you don't understand. You're putting stuff together. You spend the first, 20 years of your life, more even. There's things that you realize as an adult that you're like, oh wait, that's why things are this way. And you realize like you spend your whole childhood trying to figure it out. What's going on? Like how do things work? And the fact that you were repeatedly told, oh, if you do this, you'll go to jail.
Yeah.
And then given a vivid portrait beyond your ability to even fully understand that, like, here's what will happen to you in jail, is also like, because that's not true. That's a made up thing that an adult man is telling you.
Yeah.
That like we look to adults to give us a sense of what's really going on in the world. And as a kid, we use our imagination, sometimes to protect ourselves. But then when you realize that like, oh, adults are also making things up, knowing that you'll buy it because you're still putting it together. So like you're making up your own fake things, but you're also having to deal with made up things that are being thrown at you as kind of like weaponizing your own imagination,
Yeah. That's a really articulate way of talking about it, because it's sort of like this. I realized when I had kids, like when I had my second child, or my wife did, but when we had our second child, June's dad passed away within a couple of weeks. And our oldest was just old enough to be aware and around and ask questions about like what happened to her dad. And our youngest was just a newborn. And I talked to like a child psychologist because she's a friend of ours. And I was like, how do we talk about death? Like, how do we talk about death to the kid, and without it being scary? And she said, great advice. She's like, be honest, but succinct. And I always have taken that as a way of dealing with kids. Like, you don't have to give them everything. Like, they don't know more than you give them. So if you just are like, oh, grandpa, he died, and we're gonna go say goodbye to him, and that's the last time we're gonna see him. Like, we don't have to go into creating a much bigger portrait, because it's sort of like then the rug can get ripped out from under you in a way. Like, I know that my we're wrestling right now about Santa Claus. I know there's some parents out there who are like, we don't tell our kids that, we're lying to our kids, and we were really wrestling. We're like, oh, I don't know. Like, I want him. Like, I like the magic of that. I want him to enjoy that, but I also don't want him to go into school. And like this year, he's like, I'm one of the only ones who still believes. And I'm like, oh, I don't want him to be that kid either. I don't want to betray him. Like, I don't want him to be made fun of because he doesn't believe in Santa Claus. It's like,
Yeah.
And it's like, and you walk this line, you're constantly walking this. And I walked into this the other day with my other son. We were watching a Mr. Beast video, and he's like, I hired an assassin to try to get me, and if he gets me, he gets $1 million. And my son's like, what's an assassin? And I was like, oh, just somebody you hire to kill you. And he's like, oh. And I walked away from it, and then later on in the night, he came up to me, he's like, Dad, is there an assassin that's going to kill me? And I was like, oh, no, I didn't brace it enough. I didn't know enough to start to talk about it. And I think we're getting to a good spot with it. And then his older brother comes in, he's like, yeah, the only way the assassin's going to kill you is if someone hires someone. And then no one's going to hire an assassin to kill you. Like, that was, just like, and you realize how fragile kids' minds are. And it's like, and how quickly they'll believe or not believe and be betrayed, or there's a lot of power as an adult to kind of tell kids.
I worked at my friend's preschool for a little while, and so I witnessed a lot of parents, and I would learn a lot about how different parents would handle different things, and some were like really open about everything, and some were much more. And there's one that I remember because I remember it being like, I would be so baffled if I was a 2-year-old and I had to process this. There was this 2-year-old kid in the class, and I guess he was like, his mom was like talking to him after class one day, and this kid said to his mom, Callista and I are having sex. And this is like a 2.5-year-old kid. This is like a weird, like he's like three maybe. And she said, Oscar, do you even know what having sex means? It's how animals make babies. And the kid's just like, and I'm like, how is this kid supposed to process
it's
this thing?
Information, yeah.
It's both too much and not enough, but it's definitely the seed from which you can build your own mental reality of like, okay, like the kid doesn't know what he's saying. He's heard it and he's like reappropriate, but then he's given an explanation. Like, he understands animals. He understands that animals have babies. So he's been given like the key to like the wrong room,
So I didn't put this in the book, but there was a time in my life where there was very sexualized kids where I was in school around 3rd grade, which is odd, right? And obviously looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, there was something bigger happening that I didn't quite understand.
Yeah.
But one of the things that stuck in my mind for a very long time was a kid told me that when you have sex, you have to make sure you wear a rubber. And I said, well, what's a rubber? And he said, it's when you take the tip of the eraser off your pencil and you put it in your penis hole. And that to me, I was like, oh, that sounds awful. And for like, and you know, and it's like, it's not something that's coming up in a casual conversation, like, Mom, what's a rubber? But for the longest time, I was like, this is just, why would you ever want to have sex? It would be so hard to get a pencil and do that. And it always
how long do you estimate you walked around this world thinking that that was in your future?
I mean, I honestly think a solid 2 years, because again, it's like we 2 or 3 years, because we weren't talking about like, it wasn't like condoms are coming up ever.
No.
Like, it was like, this is a kid. He talked about a condom, so it got locked in my head that that's what a condom was. And then when my dad owned a pharmacy, and then when I was there, I saw he was selling condoms, and I was able to, like, again,
Yeah.
you know, so I did a little recon and was able to be like, all right, this is not.
But on some,
they've upgraded it. Like, oh, it used
Yeah.
to be that.
on some level, though, I mean, it's so funny how it's not that everything can mess you up in a bad way or in a irreparable way, but there is some part of you as an adult man that is different because you walked around 2 years thinking that.
Yeah,
It might be the smallest little part of you.
Yeah,
Every little thing changes us.
well, that's what I think. It's like you start to build these like ways of looking at life, and I think that's like one of the weird things about like even like relationships. Like, I grew up on rom-coms and stuff like that, and you know, they're, oh, this is the right way to you meet somebody, and it has to be like this, and they don't like you at first, and then they will like you, and it's like it creates these false narratives. Like, I remember when I had a kid, I was like, oh, that's what having a baby is like, you know, because in movies it's like, I'm in labor. They cut out like that. You kind of have like a 7-hour minimum window before that baby comes out. Like, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
We gotta rush. It's coming out, you know?
Yeah, so many like sitcoms from the 80s had like 2-part episodes where it's like, there's a blizzard and we can't get to the hospital, and you just, everyone's prepared for that. Yeah. I also think it affects the way people plan weddings, because everybody plans weddings as if they're going to, if something goes wrong, it'll be a disaster.
Yeah.
As if it's going to be like, they plan as if it's going to be noises off, you know?
Yeah.
And
for the other shoe to drop.
so people stress about weddings in ways that are like very much affected by these stories. It's also like, you know, people are afraid in elevators that the elevator is going to drop. And I learned something at one point, because I used to work at the Barnes & Noble in Union Square, and it's a very slow elevator. We get stuck a lot. But it's a hydraulic elevator, so there's literally a pole that lifts it up, and then they lower it down. It's like you're not hanging from anything. You're being pushed up and pushed down, so it cannot fall.
Right.
Like,
but
and
everyone thinks that we're on this like thread that, like, you know, somebody can just like use an axe on and it's going to drop.
but also I learned that since the last time that's been possible was like the 1800s. Like,
really? See,
any modern elevator has, even if you cut all of the thick cords that are holding it, the most you could fall is like a floor and a half, and then there are all these like things that will catch it. So basically, whenever elevators in movies fall from the top to the bottom, you should be as frightened of that as you are of body switching with another person, like a father-son Freaky Friday.
I love it. But that's the thing. You don't know this stuff, and then I remember the first time I went to a doctor, like as an adult, and they were asking family history. He was asking, well, how, you know, tell me about your grandfather, what happened to him. And the one thing that my family used to say is like, oh, he died of a broken heart. And I remember, and I was about to say, oh, a broken heart. And I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. But like in my head, it's like, oh yeah, he died of a broken heart. It's like, no, like he committed suicide, like, you know, and that, you know, that, like, right. But it's like, they weren't telling me that. They're like, oh, right, he was sad, so he had a broken heart. So, but then you can't articulate that.
Now,
like, or it's like locked in there. And I was so embarrassed when I was talking to the doctor. I was like, oh yeah, that makes no sense. I had to call my mom and be like, what happened over there? And she's like, oh, this and this and this. I was like, oh, okay. I feel like a fucking idiot.
Yeah, it's now, have you found, because when you were putting this together, in putting together these stories and these memories. A thing that I've been wrestling with recently is sort of like, how much of your private self do you give to everyone? To like,
Yes.
there's an aspect of like, once you put these stories out into the world, especially in a book where people can physically own your stories,
Yeah.
is there any part of you that was like reluctant, or were there things when, as you were writing, you were like, no, I'm gonna keep that for me. That's not for this book. How much of a how much of a filter or a barrier did you feel any need to have when writing this?
It's so interesting you asked me that question, because I wanted to ask you that, because I watched your documentary and I loved it. And I just think that you're such a fascinating, hilarious person.
Thank
But
you.
I also think that
Likewise.
people assume certain things, or they want certain things. You're very honest. Like Dead Eyes to me was you have a new podcast, by the way, right now. Tell me the title of it again. It's like
Tiny Dinos. Tiny Dinos.
Which you have to listen to. But you were very honest and open in Dead Eyes. But you also have control over that. Like, you knew what you can say, and that's a story that you have cultivated, and you went down interesting paths and had these amazing conversations, very honest conversations with a lot of people, and eventually even Tom Hanks at the end. But the documentary, you don't have control over 100%, right? Or there, and it's showing these things that, as an audience member, I'm fascinated by. But it is that thing, like you're giving over a part of yourself that I think we all try to protect. And for me, I always try to draw that line in a sense of going, there will always be things that I don't share, because if I share them, they become less special, like my family. And one of the things about this book that I really tried very hard to do was, I'm not telling my mom's story. I'm not telling my dad's story. I'm not even telling June's story. I'm telling my story. And I'm not trying to analyze any of those people. So it's like like I'm telling you my version of events. So that, like, in one way, it kept me, like, these are stories I'm okay with sharing. Like, this book isn't therapy for me. This book is a reflection of therapy and work that I've done. And for a long time, I didn't share this because it was told to me that I shouldn't share. My parents said, we don't talk about that. Yeah. And I was like, why not? I'm an adult. I have kids. That's a part of me. I'm happy with where I am. I'm happy with who I am. I want to, like, make that part of my story. But sharing doesn't mean oversharing. I think some people do have a problem with that. It's like, I'm going to share everything. It's like I share everything. But there's certain stuff I won't talk about. And even in this book, there is, I was saying this last night to David Remnick. There's a story that I remember vividly, but I remember the middle detail of it, and I don't remember the beginning or the end. And it's pretty traumatic. And for a long time, I sat and I tried to almost like meditate on it. Like, what was that story? And I couldn't tell you the beginning or end. And I was like, well, I can't put that in the book. Because I don't feel like, I didn't want to create something that was fake, or like I tried to be honest with like what was, I am honest, but it's like, but that one was too ethereal, even though it's like a very traumatic thing that I can tell you that middle, but that's not a good story because it's just the middle. But how did you deal with it? Like, I just curious because I think you've just been through it. And that's what I was thinking about. Like, first question I asked you in LA was, your biggest fear was like, I'm going to come off, like an asshole or something like that, or and then you watch the thing and you certainly don't. You come off, I think, in a very nice way, but it's scary, I think, in a way to put yourself.
Well, to me, it seems like I immediately sort of recognized, even in the way that you're telling the story, that it feels like there's an aspect of the way you tell these stories that these are a gift that you're sharing with people, because not everyone is able to process what they went through, or they might have processed it in a way that feels completely isolated and like they're not like anybody else. I feel like there's a lot of people who, particularly in, let's say, the past 5 years, there's been like, we have the technology to be lonelier. I mean, it's great. In some ways, the technology helps with loneliness because we can connect in ways that we couldn't before. But there are also aspects. Anything that brings us closer together can also be reverse engineered to push us further apart. And to me, it feels like the choice to tell these stories in the way that you're telling them feels like it feels like a thing that for a lot of people is going to open up a feeling of being like seen and being like that their own, and feeling like they can tell, even they don't have to write a book, but that they can, that same thing that's preventing that oh, you shouldn't tell these stories. There are other people
Yeah,
out there who I think this book will like lead them to feel like, oh, I can maybe tell my friends these stories, or I can,
yeah. You know,
tell my
I
kids,
and I think I think it is important to do, because you said early on, you're like, oh, I didn't have this kind of relationship with my parents, but I think there's still things, like universal things that you can identify with. I read that
Yeah.
Paris Hilton book. I love this Paris Hilton book. Now my life is very different than Paris Hilton, and her parents sent her away to this boarding school where famously kids were like beaten at this boarding school and died and because they misbehaved. It's really, I never had an experience like that.
Yeah.
But I can relate to certain emotional truths, and there's certain things that come in there, and the book isn't, it kind of goes all over the place. And I think, to your point, the one chapter I wanted to pull out, it's at the very end, is about like I learned very late in my life, just in the last like couple of years, that I had ADHD, and I was like, and like, it seems like everybody has it. So should I put that in the book? And I was really wrestling with that because, in one respect, it actually opened up a whole part of my life. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I can identify this thing that has been. I felt like this was just my quirks, but I was able to be like, oh my gosh, this is something that is actually diagnosable and something I can actually work with instead of like working around. Like I felt like I had a scaffolding on a building for years that I was like, I can keep this building standing straight, but the scaffolding has to stay on. And then maybe in a way of like diagnosing this and working in a different way, I can take the scaffolding down and I can be a little bit more free. And I was saying to June, I want to cut this out. And she read the book at the very end, and she's like, you have to leave that in because it will help other people come to the conclusion that you did. And that's what happened to me. I found out this through reading other people talking about it. I was like, oh, that seems like me. And I went deeper and deeper and deeper. I was like, because people shared, I actually got help. I would never have done that.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to ignore your question to me before, which was, what I'll say is basically, because the documentary formed itself sort of organically, it was supposed to just be, they were going to film one of my shows. Then I was like, you want to see behind the scenes how we make the show? And then they started clearly shifting the focus to be like, oh, we want the movie to be a portrait of you and your life. Yeah. And at that point, my response, quite honestly, was to start throwing up barriers to, because I was very much like, once those floodgates opened, I became very protective because I was like, there are certain things where I would be a little bit helpful or a little bit cooperative, and I was cooperative with the film and I'm supportive of it. But at the same time, once I realized that it was going to go beyond the scope of what I thought it was going to be, then I started playing defense a little bit, because I'm like, even just in terms of, there was a point where they got very excited about the whole Dead Eyes aspect of it. And I had to say, like, there are parts of this that I'm actively working on a separate project about. And so they ended up finding their own shape, but it's also like a very different movie than if I had fully cooperated and made my own. If I'd been controlling it, it'd be a very different story,
Well, I think that, like, what I love about the doc in one way that I think is so unique is it captures what it's like to do a show at UCB at a certain time. I mean, you and I have been performing at UCB theater for years and years, and you really got the tail end of like the UCB experience. But I think what that captures is like, people ask, "Oh, what was it like in those early days?" And that doc captures that beautifully. Like, I've never seen anything come close to it. And that was amazing. But then I also felt like I got to know you, but I mean, my God, I would never let anyone come here. Like, I just did this CBS Saturday Morning. They were like, can we interview your mom or dad? I was like, absolutely not. Like, I love them, and they're my closest allies and friends, and I love them to pieces. But I don't want, for you to put your parents there, I was like, wow, I got nervous. I'm like, oh, that must have been a challenging moment too.
Well, it was the one concession I made, and it was also it was a failed gambit on my part because it was right after Christmas. I was back in New York, and they're like, "How about we fly you back for a weekend? You could spend the night in your old room." Well, and I was like, "Okay, that's nice." And that was 2 months before I ended up being trapped in lockdown with them for all of the pandemic.
Yes.
So in the pandemic, I often thought, why did I give up that interview to them for a weekend trip to Missouri? I ended up spending the whole year there. It was but I also knew that my parents, like my relationship with my parents, I knew that the parents they were going to get for the documentary were the showbiz version of my parents. They knew what the brief was. I told them beforehand, this is a documentary about the George Lucas talk show. They were not going to go into my full story, you know?
That's great that you have parents that you can trust like that, because I mean, and I will say one of the wonderful things about it was, I mean, your parents are hilarious. I fell in love with them, but I also found it to be such a love letter to your dad too. You got to do yourself a favor. Go buy one of these books and then go see Connor's documentary and read it while you're waiting for the previews to start, because it really is. I just, you know, but it's hard. It's hard. You're putting so much of your stuff out there, and now you said it's there. It exists, and it's there, and it's locked in amber on some level. But I do think it's important to still have walls. Like, because it's like, if you don't have walls, then you don't actually have anything that's private. And I think privacy is important in the grand scheme of just enjoying your life. I love my family, and I will never share parts of that part of my life,
because those belong to you and your family.
Yeah, you know, and my parents too. But this I kept you for too long, by the way. I'm so sorry. This has been lovely.
I am really enjoying your book so far. I can't wait to finish it. And I'm going to be recommending it to tons of people because I think it's such a, it also, I feel like I'm also in the same way you were saying about documentary, they're learning things about you that also, you're one of the people, and I don't know how intensely you know this or how rare this is. I've yet to encounter a person who knows you or knows of you that doesn't like you. And and you can talk to people. I don't know how aware you are of that like in our world of like comedy and show business, that when you're talking to someone, there's nobody that doesn't like somebody. Like there's always somebody who doesn't like.
Sure, of course,
you're the person who, when your name gets mentioned, the person in the room who's like, I hate everybody, will be like, well, except Paul.
You are lovely to say that, and not just because you're saying that to me, but I feel the same way about you. You have this same ability where people are like, oh, kind of like you are spoken about in such a beautiful way, as a talent and just as a wonderful guy, and so that means the world to me. And I wouldn't have said it if it's not true. So thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me chat with you. Congratulations on the book. And
I'm so glad we chatted. That was awesome. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you. All right.
Talk soon.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
All right, we're going to keep this going on. I've signed all the books. I didn't think anyone thought I was going to be able to do it that quickly, but we've signed. There's tons of books, or 500 books sitting next to me that we did quickly, like within the first 40 minutes. But because I have a crack staff. But to keep this going, I have a great guy. I co-host How Did This Get Made with him. We were on the league together. Jason Mantzoukas, who is from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You know him from the Percy Jackson series on Disney Plus, and also my tech guru, my musical guru, the best. Please welcome Jason Mantzoukas. Well, yeah!
Let's go!
Let's do this!
Some books.
Let's go! It was so funny. There was such a panic about me being able to sign all these books. I've done it. I've done the sign.
Oh my god!
Now I'm just sitting here chatting.
The chat is just watching you just crush book after book. Because you've been telling me for months that you've been exercising that signing arm.
Just grip strength.
You've had one of those like 80s villain, you know, those they're always squeezing that thing that is going to give them big grip strength.
You know, I was talking to Lisa Gilroy. Jason and I perform in an improv group called Dinosaur, and Lisa and I are into Survivor, and the finale tonight. But she was going to a Survivor themed birthday party, and we were just talking about. We were trying to figure out what are the elements that you need to be good on Survivor, and it was grip strength and core work. And she literally spent like the last 2 weeks working on grip strength to make sure that she could do the party.
I feel like I feel like the rule of threes. I think it's grip strength, core work, and betrayal. So prepare for Lisa Gilroy to betray you at this birthday party.
God! I'm not even.
Our alliance is broken.
I was just watching from afar. I watched her.
Oh, okay.
Jason, first of all, I appreciate you getting up early to come and chat with us too. So I appreciate that.
Of course. I got up early as the sun was rising. I was setting up my lights and my microphone. I had to paint these. I painted these portraits behind me just to get ready for it.
Have you bought anything new in the world? I mean, I'm not asking you to show it to me, but how often are you like?
I
have an amazing art collection.
Since last we spoke, and I was on like the Twitch show that you and Rob do, showing stuff. I definitely have purchased more weird art that is yet to be hung, but is really somewhat truly wild stuff.
Jason has, and I should post a clip of it one time because it's art. It is art, and it can be as simple as
you say that though. You say that though as if it's not art.
Well,
you said it though as if it's art, but
what it is like it's not like, and I mean maybe I should take a look at myself and judge why I'm saying it. I was gonna say it's not professional art, but I was like it is professional because anybody who makes anything, you're an artist, and so even if it's a trophy for most meals
I agree.
Dad, which is a trophy.
I agree with you. Yes, that trophy that is right there. The trophy's right there. It says most meals with Dad. I'll show it to you.
Most meals with Dad is my favorite thing. It's Jason found this, like somebody got this trophy. And what made me sad about this, I was talking about this the other night. They don't have it anymore. Dad doesn't have it, or the award winner doesn't have it. Like that to me bummed me out. Like that, like somewhere along the line, it's been given up.
I have so many things in my house that are not just strange, portraits or paintings or stuff like that, but that seem truly personal. You know what I mean? That feel as though they're personal to those people, not whether it's an inside joke or whether it's something that meant something to a child. It's not just a thing. It feels as though I've got weirdly a piece of their past in my, like, I remember once at a I might have told you this at an estate auction, like a yard, like an auction in upstate New York that was like an estate sale. I bought 2 full big cardboard boxes full of photographs that were a family's photo history from like the 40s until like the 90s. And the whole unpacking, and they were all loose. So it was just trying to put together a history of this family from when they had like horses and a farm in upstate New York to like the 70s and 80s when they're living in like a city, like not a proper city, but like a much larger city. Like horses are gone. Absolutely fascinating.
This is amazing. I want to ask you about this. I'm also supposed to plug right here. There's a link right here. And basically you can go to joyfulrecollections.com and you will get, use Joyful15 at the checkout. You'll get 15% off. And I'm signing these books, but I've already signed all the books. But I wanted to ask you about this. The part of the first chapter of my book, I talk about like I collect stuff, but I collect my own stuff. Like it's like a movie ticket and stuff like that. And CBS Saturday morning came to my house.
Sure. And
they went. They were like, can we go into your garage and see your boxes of stuff that you have collected? And I was like, yeah, sure. It's like okay. And then I've never felt more embarrassed. Like I love those boxes. I love everything in those boxes. But then like taking it out felt like I was a straight up hoarder. And I was like, oh, here's the ticket to the pilot taping of the Dana Carvey show. And Billy Joel ticket. I have like this book that I bought at a George.
Wait, you went to the pilot taping of the Dana Carvey show?
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool.
I don't even know how I think I was just a fan of Dana Carvey. And again, I save all this stuff, but then sometimes I forget about it. So I look at it, I'm like, oh, whoa, I forgot that I was at that.
Cool.
I know I went to something. But do you, I know that you and I, like, you collect that, and I like, do you, like, where are you at in collecting? Because I'm not like collecting, like, I'm not like, oh, every Funko I need to have. I'm not like that kind of collector. I like collect different stuff that like it has a connection. Do you do that? Or are you like, June hates that I have these boxes and she has no understanding why I should save anything.
I do. You know, I'm somewhere in between because I definitely obviously collect stuff. I'm a collector. Yeah. I have collections of things, and they are esoteric, like the artwork around or stuff like that, all the way to like records and comic books and the stuff that I've been collecting since I was a kid, you know. What I'm bad at is what you're describing. I'm bad at collecting my personal history. You know what I mean? And that makes me sad sometimes because I'm like, I also have like a terrible memory. So I neither have the memory nor the item to jog my memories. And that's a bummer.
You said, and you don't have to go into it. I don't think I'm betraying any personal thing, but you said
do not betray me. This is not Survivor.
Wait, you said something that I loved, and I was like, oh man, I wish I did this. Like that you would keep on like a lunch sack, like your daily, like your to-do list, your daily to-do list. And
like, yeah, that's the only. I don't keep a journal or anything like that, but I just write a daily to-do list.
And that to me, like the fact that you have that is like. I when I was going and writing this book, I would look at like little filofaxes where I'd be like, oh, going to this thing, and like looking at how empty my filofaxes too is like so funny, like just days on end, nothing.
Oh yeah, no, I'm bad at that, but but what it turns into rather is when all you have as a record of your life is your to-do list. Right. Because I carry over what I didn't do today into tomorrow's list. Right. What it turns into is a staggering illustration of how much I'm not getting done. And the things that I'm truly like you want to look at, like, what are you avoiding or what are you not dealing with? Look at the fact that like at one point for, I'm going to say 3+ years, wisdom teeth was the top of my to-do list because I needed to have my wisdom teeth taken out, and I was too afraid to make the appointment and do it.
I mean, you got them out though?
Oh, I got them out, but I got them out as a full-on adult, and it was not fun.
Yeah. Dental surgery is rough. Although
it's gotten better.
Yeah, but you and I have talked about this Apple Vision Pro, which I was really trying to sell you on, and I don't know if I've given you the latest update, but June has stolen it from me and hid it.
Whoa, really?
Yes. She won't let me know where it is.
Not so she can use it because she doesn't want you using it.
Doesn't want me.
I thought this reveal was that like you were going to be like June is obsessed with a game like where she like is like a Jedi or something.
No, God, I only wish. If I ever saw June playing a video game, I think I would be like, okay, something has happened. Something terrible has happened to my wife.
Someone has replaced my wife with some sort of clone.
I'd have to just stab that person immediately because it's definitely not my wife. She always wants me to go to bed with her at the same time, and I try to, and I do. But what happens is she immediately falls asleep. And what we always are watching are some sort of cold case. Someone's been murdered, like the neighbor didn't know. And she's passed out. And if I am to change the channel, if I change that channel, she immediately wakes up. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're asleep. I'm listening.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay. So now I'm stuck. My wife's arm on me. And I'm sitting there watching something I don't want to watch. It's like depressing me about this, child who killed their father in a fit of rage. And I was like, Vision Pro is going to be great. I'll put it on, and I can watch Dune 2 and IMAX. So life is good.
Yeah, just sitting right there in bed.
And she woke up one night, saw it on, freaked out like I was a clone. Like, get that off! Get that off! I'm like, what is it doing? It's not bothering you. You're asleep. And get it off. And I was like, take it off. And then I left it by the side of the bed, and I never have seen it again. And I go, where is it? She's like, you'll never know. You'll never know.
Oh my God.
And all I've been wanting it for is like, if I go to the dentist and I'll put that on. I'd be living, I could do whatever I want. But no, it's the most expensive thing that I've lost, not by my own. It's been
I love it. I love that June has hidden your video games from you.
It's not even video games. Look, Jason, I'm gonna tell you, I talked about this Apple Vision Pro. I love it. I'm packing my bag and I'm watching the NBA. And one corner I'm watching stats, and the other life.
I like that. And you describing the ability to put it on and watch a movie like widescreen, like the idea of getting on a long flight or whatever, putting. It's just a matter of carrying that big rig around. You know,
that's the thing. I try. Like it's like it is like I want to wear it on an airplane. But then I also don't want to be the guy on the airplane wearing it.
I saw for the first time just recently, a couple of months ago, a woman get on, sit over next to, it couldn't have been more perfectly cast because she was seated next to, like, I'm going to say like a guy in his 60s, you know, like an older guy, you know, and she proceeds to, and I can't hear what they're saying, but I'm watching it unfold. As we take off and get in the air, she proceeds to start to unpack, I believe, an Oculus, you know, like one of those proper big things. And she's unpacking it. And he's kind of like, what is this? And I can see her explaining it to him. It's a video game. And okay. Okay. Like a grandpa talking to like his granddaughter. And then she puts it on with the things and is just like, for the rest of the flight, just kind of subtly moving, but moving her. Like, I was like, I shouldn't be allowed to watch this. This is intimate. This feels intimate.
I don't like a plane is the worst place to be in that because it's like it's so easy to check out, and that's the one thing about it. Like if you hit the button on it, like the world disappears. If you hit another button on it, you can see the world, and it's like. It's for the privacy of your own home. You don't even have to be doing anything weird. It's just like it just seems like you really are isolated.
But it's so true. But remember when it was like so crazy to start seeing people on the street talking on cell phones publicly?
Yes.
You'd be like, hey, that's private. Take your conversation and make it private. And now people walk around on a speakerphone like, I'm on a walk in my neighborhood and someone's like, and I don't know, and I want to go, and they don't, and I'm like, what? Turn the speakerphone off, stop screaming. We have already in the 20 years of cell phones vastly eclipsed the period where it was like, where you would be like, hey, sorry, I'm out in public. Yeah, I'll call you back when I get someplace private. Okay, bye. You know, and you know, like it was like considered embarrassing or shameful or something to be talking loudly on the cell phone outside of the house.
I mean, I know you're not on social media, but if you ever were to Google this, it's one of my favorite accounts. It's called like Influencers in the Wild, and it's just people videotaping people making social media content, like in just like, you know, like at the beach. There's just like somebody like doing that in front of a tripod or like it never ceases to be entertaining because it's the other version is so lonely. The other, like you see it at the beach, but it's like when you're seeing somebody tape it.
No, it feels depressing and lonely and like I love that more of that, please. More shooting of the like what a sad thing it is to be making those tapes.
I just want to remind everybody, it's a couple minutes left on this whole entire thing. I'm signing books. We have 500 that are signed. There's going to be bookplate ones. Just use that code joyfulrecollections.com and you use joyful15 to get 15% off, which is really like the list price of the book. So you're getting an autographed book sent anywhere in the world. I am always fascinated by that. By the way, have you seen Fall Guy yet?
Yes, saw it on Saturday night.
Okay. Oh yeah, because I'm so.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. I thought it was an absolute blast.
I loved it, and I was thinking, like, was that a show that you watched when you were a kid? Like when you were a kid, like was Fall Guy in your grouping of shows?
It was, I will say, it wasn't one of my like, I love this shows, but it
Right,
is
yeah.
a show from my childhood for sure. You know,
Well, that's the same way. I was like, why wasn't I watching this show? I would watch
you were
18
too
more than
young.
that.
It
Okay,
was
too young.
already
Okay.
off the air, I think.
Okay.
Fall Guy, because also Fall Guy, I don't think Fall Guy was. That's what makes it so inexplicable that they chose the name Fall Guy for this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it works because the IP is not. Nobody really knows the Fall Guy. It wasn't like.
Right.
You know, it wasn't Lee Majors' other big hit, The $6 Million Man, which was
Right.
like a behemoth. The Fall Guy was just like a popular other show. It was not, you know, one of those big shows.
And I think that I think his stunt company was called Fall Guy Stunts. Or,
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm not going to spoil. I'm not going to spoil anything about the movie, but I do want to talk about this one moment because now that you've seen it, it's worth it. Lee Majors does make a cameo in a post-credit scene. And so it's a post-credit scene. Really, the movie is over. There's nothing spoiled about it. But he's coming in, and I feel like he's taking care of the bad guys at the end, like arresting the bad guys. He pulls up in a cop car, but comes out in wearing
Fall Guy stuntman weird. Yes.
Right. And I'm like, did he? I got to ask Drew Pierce, our buddy. I was like, did he refuse to play a cop? And he was like, no, I am.
That's my guess. My guess is his cameo. My guess is he insisted that he be not just a cameo in the movie, a la Stan Lee. Oh, right. He's a bartender. Here he's a cop. Here he's a this. Right. He's that. I think he was like, no. I will appear as my character from the Fall Guy.
So the way that they've written him in, and I think this is why it has to be a post-credit scene, because it is confusing. He pulls up in a cop car, but comes out as his character from the Fall Guy and kind of arrests the bad guy. But it's like,
and when I tell you, like, who is that cameo for? Who is that wink for? You know what I mean? Like, if the movie is a success, which very sadly it seems like it's not, and I wish that it was because I really enjoed it. I feel like it is a rom. What'd you say?
It came out on video demand today.
Oh wow! Okay,
crazy.
I feel like they didn't play up enough that it's a rom-com, or it's like there's a very very present love story in this movie, which is I thought very charming and satisfying.
I love wrestling. Anything that guy did. I was like, I could just watch him react to me. Like, everything was so funny, and like it's kind of like the character from the Shane Black movie.
Nice Guys.
Nice Guys. It's like really fun. I just love watching him be put upon.
Yeah. Oh no, I really enjoyed it.
Fun. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
But it was what was funny to me, to point out your thing too, which is they kept in the movie saying. I felt in a good way like they were also trying to make the Fall Guy title work for the guy taking the fall.
Yeah.
You know, like they were both, as a play on words, both taking the fall stunts, but also taking the fall like they were framing him for the murder. But then that really doesn't make any sense when Lee Majors comes out with a hat that says Fall Guy. So then I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What's going on here?
It's like they almost pulled Lee Majors out of some sort of convention. Like, hey, come on.
Like a multiverse.
I always remember Owen Burke and I always tell this story. Like, we were at Comic-Con and Lou Ferrigno was there. He was at his table. And some guy sees Lou Ferrigno play the Incredible Hulk on the old Incredible Hulk series. And Lou Ferrigno would be like, this guy just saw him and it was psyched. He was like, oh my God! Lou Ferrigno, Lou, I love you, Lou, I love you. And Lou was just standing, goes, $20. It's like, $20. Didn't even look up, and it's like, I always remember that. But like, it seems like to me, like that's the energy that Lee Majors brought into that. Because I think Fall Guy Heather Locklear was maybe the
Heather Thomas, I believe.
Oh, was that Heather Thomas next to him?
I believe it was. I believe it was. I'm not positive about because I was collecting my stuff and starting to leave. I didn't know I didn't know that scene was coming.
No, they kind of embedded it enough that you were like,
yeah.
If you really want to be a completist, you can watch this final scene. But I loved it. I'm excited that you saw it. Jason, I know we have some stuff coming up. We're going to be in Nantucket. We're going to be in Boston this summer with
How Did This Get Made? We're coming to the East Coast. We're coming to your beach towns. We're coming to your coastal enclaves. If you're at the Nantucket Film Festival, we'll be there. What's that?
Be on the lookout for it is what I'm telling people to do. Be on the lookout.
Oh, yeah. We'll be in Boston.
Last night, David Remnick and I, the editor of the New Yorker, he came and did my book event in Brooklyn. And man, that guy knows bad movies. He went like,
really?
He was like, I shouldn't say I was surprised, but I was like, he wanted to like chop it up about like, he knew about the beekeeper. He knew about and he really wanted to like break it down. And he gave me some movie suggestions, and I was like,
oh, I love that. That's great.
Maybe you'll see like some sort of eventually in the New Yorker Festival. Maybe we'll get David Remnick to do How Did This Get Made? And Colbert.
That would be so fun.
I would love it. And Colbert wants to do it. And Colbert on the show literally said, I want to come on your show and do Maniac Cop. So
yeah, great.
So we have maybe some fun celebrity additions.
That would be incredible. What bookstore are you in, out of curiosity?
Right now I'm in the HarperCollins's office. So this is all the things. So I've been running around New York City. I've dropped in books and signing books and Barnes & Noble, and I'll be continuing to do that, and I'll put that on my website. But yeah, I'm just in the HarperCollins office here, the beautiful office.
And they said you can take as many books as you want from that, and just
full of books.
So cool, so smart.
Oh, guess what? I'll let you go, and I'll talk about this when we talking.
I hope this is HarperCollins gossip. I hope this hope this is lit gossip. Go.
All right. You'll never guess what David Balducci was doing in the bathroom.
You'll never believe what Harlan Corbin said to me when
the guy who writes Curious George really has a real monkey. I was in the Criterion Closet yesterday.
Oh, cool!
That was a highlight.
I watched that series.
That's a great fun series. And
I just watched do you know when it comes out? I literally last night I just watched the Tim Blake Nelson one, which was great.
Oh yes, I love being in that closet was truly like a highlight. And
did you how much pre-work did you like ahead of time? Did you like go through the website and look like what could I, The
only thing I didn't do that someone told me I should have done was just look for all the discontinued ones and try to take those. I took one that was discontinued by accident because you can't get them.
Yeah. The discontinued one that I want, that I've been looking for forever, is the long gone Alfred Hitchcock box set that Criterion put out.
Oh yeah.
This is like close to 20 years ago.
What I was really pumping them for was I want them to release The Heartbreak Kid, which I know is tied up in many.
The Elaine May Heartbreak Kid?
Yes. Yeah, it's so great. And the Ben Stiller one. The Heartbreak Kid. And then
the Elaine May movies are hard. A New Leaf should be up there. Like all those, like those are hard.
Well, the good one is they have Mikey and Nikki, which is great on Criterion, which is really good. I really like that. I have to let you go because we're going to be wrapping up though now. But Jason, I wanted to say thank you for just chatting with me. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Paul. The book is phenomenal. The stories, I've heard so many of them on stage, and in the book they are so much deeper and wilder and crazier. I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited for people to read this book. Congratulations.
You are awesome. Thank you, Jason. See you later. Now, everybody, bye-bye. I'll just remind everybody. So these books, Joyful Recollections of Trauma, I have signed, everyone who's signed up for it, you're going to get an autographed book. And because we had extra time, because I was sitting here just chatting, I added some more stuff to these books. So there'll be a couple in here that would be extra special. You can keep on ordering the book because we have more to give you. All you have to do is go to joyfulrecollections.com. You enter in the code joyful15 to get 15% off. Now, let me tell you this. This book retails for $29.99. This whole experience, $35. So you're getting 15% off. You're basically getting the book at regular value with an autograph, and it ships anywhere in the world. But you're already here, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're finding this out right now. I want to thank you. I want to thank Jason. I want to thank Connor Ratliff. I want to thank Rob Huebel. or Loot Huebel, Steal Huebel, whatever you want to call them, for coming on and keeping me company. I want to thank everybody for all their questions. I love this. I hopefully will get to more local places. Let me know what you think of the book. Please post about it. Tell your friends. And a big thank you to everybody here at Premiere Live for putting this event together. This is one of the most daunting things. I wanted people to show up, and they did, and I appreciate it. Thank you. I wanted to thank everybody at HarperCollins who's been absolutely amazing and making sure that we get out in front of this book. And it just means the world to me. So thank you for buying. Thank you for pre-ordering. Thank you for being here. I truly don't take it for granted at all. And now we're done.